Whoa. Starting off a simple line, but already you can feel the tension building. Little moments like this can set the stage for a courtroom drama that grips viewers from the get-go.
I would just like to say that the state of Tennessee treated me very unfair during this whole investigation. And had I had a fair trial and an impartial jury, I would have been acquitted of the murder charges. I would have never hurt my baby, and I did not kill Evelyn. That's all.
Notice how she's framing the narrative here, claiming unfair treatment. In legal terms, claiming bias in jury selection or investigation is significant. It can impact appeals, but right now, the jury has already heard all the evidence. How persuasive do you think this defense is to the audience?
I'm sorry. Judge, the state has, prior to this hearing, filed a notice of intent in regards to enhancing factors that we believe apply, as well as a notice of intent to seek consecutive sentencing, which is what we are asking the court to do. And we believe, based upon the seriousness of the offense, as well as the fact that Miss Boswell is a dangerous offender whose behavior indicates little or no regard for human life, that she had no hesitation about committing a crime in which the risk of human life was high, that this court should run those sentences consecutive to each other. And I want to touch briefly on the enhancement factors, and primarily on the one that I think just screams out in this case, which is the violation of trust. Truly, I think the facts that were involved in this case, and the court, of course, consider everything that was presented and that came in at trial, as well as the photographs that have been introduced to the sentencing hearing, which again, those were all part of the trial evidence as well. But the trust that Miss Boswell betrayed upon her daughter was just so callous. She chose herself.
Pause here. This is where the emotional weight hits hard. The prosecution emphasizes violation of trust, which is a key legal enhancement factor in sentencing. Essentially, it's saying, not only was this a terrible act, but it's made worse because it came from the person meant to protect the child. That's a huge factor in consecutive sentencing.
Repeatedly, time and time again, over her child. All deaths are horrible, but for a small child to die in the way that Evelyn died just shows such extreme callousness. And those photographs show you. I mean, she was discarded like a piece of common garbage. Detective Lieutenant Price testified to, it looks like the body has been...
This repetition is powerful storytelling. It drives home the selfishness versus the victim's helplessness. From a viewer's perspective, it's almost cinematic. The stark contrast between the life she chose and the child she abandoned. Think about how this would resonate emotionally with the audience.
Pushed down in the trash can so we could fit more trash, more garbage on top of her child. But probably the most hurtful and severe part of this whole, and painful part of this, is the fact that all that occurred at the hands of the one person that she should have been able to rely upon and trust to protect her, her own mother. But Megan didn't do that. Megan repeatedly chose Megan. Megan chose her life. Megan chose living in a big house out by the lake. Megan chose going to the movies. She chose going to Blowing Rock, going to Gatlinburg, again and again and again, over her own daughter.
Here's a legal breakdown. The prosecution links consecutive sentencing to two findings: severity of the crime and public protection. Consecutive sentences aren't automatic. They require clear evidence of danger and extreme callousness. This is textbook application of dangerous offender criteria in Tennessee law.
In order for the court to find that the defendant was a dangerous offender and apply consecutive sentencing, there are two things that the case law has said the court has to find. One is that it relates to the severity of the crime. And I can think of nothing that would be any easier than to relate consecutive sentencing to the facts of this case and what Ms. Boswell did. I mean, not only did she murder her own child and then go about her own life, but then once law enforcement was finally brought into the case, not because of her, not because she did anything, but because it finally got recorded by her dad, well, then she manipulates law enforcement, it manipulates the community by continuing to lie over and over and over again, causing extraordinary resources to have to be involved for weeks trying to find this child in the hopes that she's alive. And then even after that, even after she finally coughs up the fact that her child is dead, she continues to lie about not knowing where she is. When all along, she's sitting there stuffed upside down in a trash can in her childhood playhouse. So I think it's very easy for this court to find that the severity of this crime and her suffocating her own child, putting her in a trash can, and then repeatedly lying about it to cover it up relates to the severity of the crime. The second finding this court has to make is that it was necessary that consecutive sentencing is necessary to protect the public from further crimes. And I provided the court, as well as Mr. Scott, with the case of State v. Taylor, which was a case in which a small child had been beaten to death, and then the mother basically delayed in reporting, calling 911, which eventually resulted in the child dying because she didn't receive any medical attention. And the court in that case found that the dangerous offender classification was satisfied because the defendant had demonstrated extreme callousness towards the health and welfare of the victim, and the results were fatal. Well, Judge, really, it does not get any more callous than what the defendant did in this case.
Finally, notice how the prosecution frames a narrative of responsibility versus victimhood. The defendant attempts to paint herself as wronged, but the state flips it. The real victim is a child. This is classic courtroom strategy. Shift the emotional focus to reinforce the severity of the crime and justify the sentencing.
You know, she turned her back, she turned her life, she turned her trust away from her own child. Evelyn got in the way of the life Megan Boswell wanted to live, and so she eliminated that problem. It truly is not getting more callous than that. So the state would submit that both those factors are met and that the court should impose consecutive sentencing. I've already touched on the element as far as trust being involved as an enhancing factor. And I'm sitting here listening to Ms. Boswell's rather brief allocution I think it's also right for the court to consider the fact that she sits here today in this courtroom still having absolutely no remorse and taking no responsibility for the death of her child. Once again, she wants to make all of us victims in the case, make herself a victim. Sheriff's office, I guess, should be issuing an apology to her for the way she's just been unfairly treated during this whole process. Judge, Miss Boswell was not treated unfairly. Her child was treated unfairly. Her 15-month-old child never had a chance because of the one person who should have protected her. So for that reason, the state is asking